Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Saturday the 21st of January 2023. I am delighted to say we had a wonderful lunch at the Isle of Wight College this week. We were trying to have a Christmas lunch as we did in 2021, but unfortunately we couldn't get a date for the college sorted, so we decided to have a 2023 New Year lunch instead. 46 of us turned up and enjoyed a 3-course meal at the college. The young students performed so well and the food was delicious. Thank you very much to the Isle of Wight College. I'm also delighted to confirm that the newsletter has come back from the printers, is being packed and will leave here on Monday. Hopefully there's no post strikes and everybody will receive theirs as soon as possible. Remember, in the newsletter there is a few save the dates and we look forward to seeing as many people as possible on the 11th of March at our open day, which is being held at Wendes Hall, the Scout Hall in the centre of Newport. Wishing everybody a safe, happy 2023 and please be careful of that ice. It's very cold. Thank you, Lisa.
This is Michael reading an article from Ireland Echo. Much needed works to improve Ryde's Great Preston Road to get underway this week. Ireland Roads is reminding residents that work to improve busy Great Preston Road in Ryde is due to get underway this week. But things won't begin today as originally planned. The 6-week project will upgrade 3 sections of Great Preston Road between Carlton Road and Alexandra Road, a total area of around 1,200 square metres. To reduce the need for future work, the project will involve strengthening the road itself as well as resurfacing it. This means deeper excavation, and as a result, Great Preston Road will be closed as a through road for the duration of the project. The work is being timed to avoid the spring and summer months when the road is busier, and also after a period of recent activity in the area by utility companies, as well as Ireland Road's own improvement work. Given the need to minimise disruption in the main holiday season, Ireland Roads is also, in the coming months, undertaking a programme of other local road improvements, all of which have been, or will be, advertised in the communities affected. The works meant to get underway today, Monday, but Ireland Roads made the decision to postpone them for a few days to allow other works that have been conducted by Southern Water to finish before they move in. An Ireland Roads spokesperson said, "It is clearly sensible, where possible, to reduce planned roadworks in the high summer season when the roads are at their busiest. But this, of course, means we have to schedule work at other times of the year. While we make every effort to minimise disruption, work of this nature will inevitably have some impact, and we'd like to thank residents in advance for their understanding."
This is Patrina reading from Isle of Wight Radio. Isle of Wight Council Planning Bible delayed again. The Isle of Wight's Planning Bible could be delayed again, this time to make way for national reforms. In November, the Isle of Wight Council's draft Island Planning Strategy, IPS, hit a wall after the majority of councillors sent it back to the leader of the authority, Councillor Laura P.C. Wilcox, to reconsider. The 15-year plan would set the council's housing targets, outline employment state and create new planning policies. Among the reasons it was returned were the suggestions it should include: 1. A clear commitment to use land the authority owns to build social homes for islanders. 2. A time limit for legal agreements to be signed or permission would be refused. 3. An affordable rented housing definition. In sending it back, the council's cabinet had to return the plan to full council by the start of February. Since the decision, however, Michael Gove, the government's Levelling Up, Housing and Communities Secretary, announced a consultation on reforms to the National Planning Policy Framework. Some of the proposals could see changes to the way local plans are made, the calculation of housing need, and a requirement for timely building within the housing market. The national consultation closes on March the 2nd and could come into force in spring 2023. Councillor Paul Fuller, the Cabinet Member for Planning, is seeking an extension to the IPS deadline until the end of June, at the latest, so that the plan can incorporate any of the changes made to the national policy. In a report going to full council, officers say, given the significance of the national consultation, sufficient time to consider its implications to the draft IPS should be given. Officers would review details of national consultation and relay potential implications for the IPS to councillors in the coming weeks.
New response support vehicle now on the run with Isle of Wight fire crews from the Island Echo read by Lee. A new to the Island Response Support Vehicle, or RSV, is now on the run with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, bringing additional and enhanced capabilities for local fire crews. The 2014 plate Volvo appliance has been transferred to Newport Fire Station from Redbridge in Southampton and is a direct improved replacement for the 16-year-old Mercedes Atego rescue tender, which was formerly based at Newport. The specialist appliance carries a wide range of equipment not found on standard pumping appliances and has on board much more than the previous rescue tender. Thanks to the improved stowage design, it means that as well as heavy lifting gear, the RSV also now carries the service's water rescue equipment, which was previously on the animal rescue unit. Portable battery lighting, equipment for gaining entry and even timber for shoring up damaged structures is now also carried, alongside other items such as a gazebo for shelter, a generator and high-level access platforms. A striking difference between the new and old rescue appliances is the loss of a high ab at the rear, although it's been said for years that it wasn't really suitable and hardly was ever used. The response support vehicle is crewed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, by 2 firefighters, meaning it can be tipped out to incidents immediately and will closely follow the first responding appliance. Its role falls in line with Hampshire fire stations, meaning more effective mobilisation by fire control. It is said that the RSV will be mobilised to all road traffic collisions involving 2 or more vehicles, as well as incidents involving heavy rescue, hazardous substances and water rescue, or simply any incident where specialist equipment may be required. Following several weeks of familiarisation, the RSV is now responding to emergencies across the Isle of Wight and has already been out several times in the past couple of weeks, including to a cliff rescue, an incident involving gas, and road traffic collisions. Other RSVs across the service are based at Basingstoke, Cosham and Redbridge fire stations.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo, read by Sue. HMP Isle of Wight blasted by inspectorate following unannounced visit. An unannounced inspection of HMP Isle of Wight has highlighted a number of issues behind the bars, including a lack of staff, an increased level of self-harm, and significant gaps in release planning for prisoners who pose a high risk of serious harm to the public. His Majesty Prison Inspectorate visited the Category B prison made up of Parkhurst and Albany prisons. Back in September and October of last year, during this inspection, inspectors identified 15 key concerns, of which 6 were deemed to be a priority to resolve. New data reveals that the prison holds a total of 971 prisoners, of which 11.6% are foreign nationals and 22% are from black and minority ethnic backgrounds. Of the prison population, 18.3% are serving life and 65.7% are serving more than 10 years. According to a reported release this week, the therapeutic and rehabilitative purpose of the prison is not sufficiently prioritised, and leaders have not developed the environment or regime in a way that seeks to ensure the needs and risks of the sex offender population are addressed. This is said to be compounded by a failure to respond to the new reality of a much larger population of Category C prisoners. It has also been found that over a third of prison officers are not available for work, which limits the delivery of the day-to-day regime and leads to prisoners spending too long locked in cells. Alarmingly, inspectors say that there are significant gaps in release planning for prisoners, many of whom pose a high risk of serious harm to the public. 1 in 5 prisoners are said to be leaving without a sustainable place to live. Another priority concern is the level of recorded self-harm amongst the prison population, which is said to be very high, with 7 self-inflicted deaths since the last inspection was carried out. Prisoners at HMP Isle of Wight are said to have very limited access to work or study. Planned access is severely undermined by poor attendance, poor punctuality, and prisoners returning to their cells early. Other concerns surround the provision of healthcare service delivery and patient outcomes, data not being used well enough to improve outcomes, residential units shabby, bleak and in need of significant repair, and mental health and learning disability services not providing an adequate or timely care of treatment. There is also evidence of insufficient oversight and control of medicines, reading and literacy not being prioritised, access to education not prompt enough, not enough contact with offender managers, and too little support to rebuild ties with families and friends, with no reliable resettlement help for those being released. Furthermore, black and minority ethnic and Muslim prisoners and those with mental health problems report a more negative experience in respect of key aspects of their care compared to other prisoners. The prison was last inspected in 2019. Charlie Taylor, Chief Inspector of Prisons, has said, HMP Isle of Wight is a training prison. Its primary purpose is to support rehabilitation and prepare prisoners for release, including those who pose a high risk of harm to the public, but it's failing to do so. Their time in prison presents an opportunity to reduce their risk of reoffending, and that opportunity is being lost when, instead of taking part in education, work and training, men are sitting locked in their cells all day. When it comes to the end of their sentences, too many men we know pose a risk of harm to the public are being released without a sustainable place to live and without proper planning around protecting victims of their crimes, and often inadequate contact with local probation services. This is frightening. The prison service has to take serious and immediate action to address this.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Isle of Wight Railways. Ashy, the tiny hamlet that used to boast 2 railway stations. In the second of our series on Isle of Wight Railways, we look at the hamlet of Ashy. That has played a significant role in the development of the island railway network. Did you know that Ashy once boasted of 2 railway stations, a branch line and a tunnel? But why would this rural spot need a station, let alone 2, given that hardly anyone lives there? The answer is that George Young, a wealthy Scotsman, had bought West Ashy Farm close to the railway, and the station appears to have been mainly for his personal convenience. Young, who was a director of the Isle of Wight Central Railway and financed the building of the Island Railway network, had plans to build housing developments at Ashy, and a railway station was a prerequisite for potential buyers to move to this out-of-the-way location. The Scotsman also owned the chalky quarry on the other side of Ashy Road, below the sea mark, as well as having a significantly sized station located near his farm. He also had a branch line built, leading from the station to the quarry. Much of the chalk used to construct the island railways originates from this quarry. Chalk could be delivered from there to any island station for the princely sum of 1 shilling and sixpence, 7.5p per tonne. For the branch line to reach the quarry, Young had a short tunnel built under Ashy Road, and it's still there today. The first train stopped at Ashy on the 20th of December 1875. The journey from Newport took just 16 minutes, a considerable saving in time in the days before motor cars. The station was originally served by 7 trains a day. However, unsurprisingly, the isolated station at Ashy saw little traffic. By the 1880s, George Young had gotten into financial difficulties. In the early 1880s, he agreed to lease his land to hold horse races on his farm. The racecourse was opened in 1882, and the first race was held in 1883. The races brought a new lease of life to Ashy and its railways. A further station was built on the branch line to the quarry, Ashy Racecourse, which was believed to have been behind the grandstand. Upwards of 3,000 people would travel to the races at Ashy at the turn of the 20th century, mostly by train. The first-class fare was 1 shilling and 4pence, 7 UP. The carriages would be left in a siding, and spectators would climb onto the roofs to get a better view. 3 champion jockeys were said to have participated in the meetings, and bookies came to Ashy from as far as London. In 1929, the racecourse grandstand was gutted in a fire. Racing continued until the 9th of June 1930. In 1931, the lease of the course was surrendered, and in 1942, the remains of the grandstand were demolished. As for Ashy Station itself, in 1926 the station was extended to accommodate longer trains. However, in 1953 the station was downgraded to a permanent halt. In 1961 a small shelter was built. Ashy Station was closed on the 21st of January 1966. Fortunately, this was a case of au revoir rather than goodbye. On the 21st of July 1991, the clock was rewound and Ashy Station was reopened under the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. Just a year later, in 1992, Isle of Wight Scurry races resumed. It is once again possible to take a steam train to the horse racing, but not to Ashy Racecourse Station, which no longer exists. Sadly, no trace of the branch line to the quarry remains. The tunnel has been filled in, although its outline can still be seen under Ashy Road. The former station building has been sold and is now a private house. Anyone wanting to visit Ashy Station can find it at the end of Station Road, which can be reached via Gatehouse Road, Deacon's Lane. Or you can take the steam railway from Smallbrook or Wootton. A footpath from Ashy Station follows the route of the former branch line to the quarry. If you want to find the location of the former tunnel, in our next edition of Isle of Wight Railways, we shall be looking at the town of Ventnor, which, like Ashy, had 2 railway stations.
This is Patrina reading from Island Echo. extra council tax help on hand for vulnerable island residents. Vulnerable Isle of Wight residents could get an extra helping hand in paying their council tax bills this year. Next week, on Wednesday, the Isle of Wight Council will decide whether to increase its local council tax support scheme, LCTS, from 65% to 70%, as it's promised last year. Under the scheme, some residents only pay 35% of their bill. It comes as the cost of living crisis increases and more families are feeling the squeeze. The LCTS scheme was first introduced 10 years ago, but the amount of support has reduced and the council says debt has increased. Officers say that as those on LCTS struggle to pay the residue level of council tax after the support has been awarded, the authority should further discount the scheme. To discount the scheme by a further 5% would cost the authority nearly £360,000. Officers warned councillors must have regard to the authority's current financial position when making the decision, as it looks to fill a hole in the budget with savings and reserves. The final decision will be made at the meeting on Wednesday, ahead of the final budget setting procedure in February. In November, the Council's Executive Cabinet members unanimously supported the increase, subject to the full Council's approval, if the Council could afford it due to the financial pressures the authority was facing. The Exceptional Hardship Fund is also available to residents in receipt of the LCTS who are in suffering hardship to receive extra assistance in paying their council tax.
Friends of St Mary's enabled a donation of key rapid response equipment from the Isle of Wight radio read by Lee. The latest round of the Friends Fund applications has seen the trustees of the Friends of St Mary's have agreed funding of £1,295 for a small but incredible piece of equipment. Known as the Emma device, it will add to the rapid response kit that is held by the on-call operating department practitioner team. The money to fund the device was raised by Jasna Mateen, a biomedical scientist who sold her homemade curries to friends and colleagues in pathology. Alexander Paul, Senior Resuscitation Officer, Resuscitation Operating Department Practitioner, said the Emma device is a pocket-size, portable capnograph which measures the amount of carbon dioxide exhaled in a patient's breath. This small device enables resuscitation and critical care teams to provide the highest standard of advanced life support when a patient collapses in any environment where they are not already attached to high-tech monitoring systems. This generous donation from the Friends of St Mary's Hospital is so valuable and has already made a difference to patients and teams in its first 2 weeks of being used. Leslie Myland, Chair of Trustees of Friends of St Mary's Hospitals, added, Jasna raised an incredible £1,200 this year, and to add to the £1,040 that she already raised last year, which contributed to resources for adult speech and language team. Thank you, Jasna and family. Your support to the Friends and therefore St Mary's is very much appreciated.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo read by Sue. Islanders can renew green garden waste collection. Households that pay to receive the Isle of Wight Council's Green Garden Waste Collection service will be able to renew their subscription from Monday. Current customers are being given priority to renew their garden waste subscriptions, which runs out from the 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024. If you pay by direct debit, this should automatically renew, and you will receive an email confirming your payment details for 2023. You can double-check payment details are up to date here, www.iow.gov.uk/garden waste subscriptions, all one word. If you pay annually by card, you'll shortly receive an email with details on how to resubscribe, so please check your emails, including your junk folder. The optional fortnightly scheme lets customers subscribe online for a 240-litre wheeled bin or 3 reusable Hessian sacks to be picked up from the curbside for a total cost of £96 per year, working out at £8 a month. Councillor Karen Lucchini, Cabinet Lead for Waste, said, "Let us come to you and continue to make your gardening life easier by resubscribing for your garden waste collection this year. It will be picked up from your doorstep and it takes the hassle out of driving to the tip. You won't have to put heavy and wet garden waste in your car boot." Strategic Manager for Environment Natasha Dick said, "Our garden waste scheme is popular and we are reminding our current customers to make sure they renew annual subscriptions to reserve their space for this year. All garden waste that is collected by the council is composted locally here on the island. In the last year, we have recycled a massive 4,005 tonnes. All of this contributes to the island's national recycling targets. Our garden waste service is a one-stop shop, meaning you do not have to call for collection each time and will be there come rain or shine. We will also be accepting new customers from the February the 23rd. The council will accept garden waste such as grass, cuttings, leaves and sticks, but no logs, rubble or soil. The garden waste subscription also includes a free Christmas tree collection service in January. For more information on your subscription and how to renew, please visit www.iow.gov.uk/garden waste subscriptions. The subscription will run from the 1st of April to the 31st of March each year, apart from the initial registration period. If you are planning on signing up for the first time, new subscribers are being accepted from February the 23rd. For full details on the service, please visit the website.
This is Michael reading an article from Island Echo. Breaking ground event at St Mary's Hospital marks major step forward. A once-in-a-generation investment programme into local NHS services has taken a major step forward as building work gets underway at St Mary's Hospital. The Investing in Our Future programme, due to be completed by spring 2024, will deliver much-needed improvements to upgrade hospital and community-based services to provide better quality care for a healthier and more resilient island community. Isle of Wight NHS Trust Chief Executive Darren Cattell, local MP Bob Seeley, Operations Director Mark Norris, Contracts Manager Derek Jackson and Project Manager Matthew Wilkes from Kia Construction joined Joe Smythe, Director of Operational Performance at the Trust, and Councillor John Nicholson, Chair of the Policy and Scrutiny Committee for Health and Social Care, for a breaking ground ceremony to mark this milestone. Isle of Wight NHS Trust Chief Executive Darren Cattell said, "I am delighted to celebrate this important milestone in our Investing in Our Future programme. The £30.4 million investment in our hospital and community-based services will see improvements to patient care, the environments we provide care for them in the transformation to our community mental health provision." Bob Seeley, MP, said, "I am delighted that work has now started on this important project that will give NHS services on the Isle of Wight a major boost. Millions of pounds of government investment will not only help to upgrade facilities in St Mary's, improve patient flow in the hospital and enable better use of beds, but it will also provide a much-needed integrated mental health and community hub in Newport High Street. These changes will benefit both our wonderful NHS staff and patients, and I cannot wait to see the transformation take place over the next year or so. The investment programme will see a new £6.7 million integrated mental health and community hub based in Newport, and an improved £6.4 million intensive care unit, a £12.2 million new emergency floor, and a £5.1 million acute bed reconfiguration at St Mary's Hospital, which will enable better use of beds and the separation planned and emergency inpatient care. Further details about each of the projects, including patient and staff benefits, frequently asked questions, as well as patient and visitor information to help plan a visit to St Mary's Hospital during the works, can be found on the Investing in Our Future website at www.investfuture.iow.nhs.uk.
This is Patrina reading an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Alan Titchmarsh joins battle to save Isle of Wight's red squirrels. Alan Titchmarsh has joined the battle to save one of the island's most beloved endangered species. The popular gardener and TV personality will work alongside the Red Squirrel Survival Trust, RSST, to mark the Red Squirrel Appreciation Day on Friday, January the 21st. The 73-year-old will be working to encourage gardeners to plant trees and shrubs which will feed our native red squirrels that will repopulate areas vacated by the declining grey population. Alan is an ambassador of the Trust, and together they have identified vital food sources. The initial aim is to encourage gardeners in and around areas that have existing red squirrel populations to plant these growing larders. The red population will extend and, as it happens, more gardeners will be encouraged to plant out in their support. RSST's research partners within the UK's Squirrel Accord have developed a special dispenser that can only be accessed by grey squirrels to contain the fertility control agent. These will be installed in major woods and forests across the UK and will also be available to private garden owners. Alan said, "We need a rapidly growing population to repopulate areas of the country that have not seen them for half a century. This is an ongoing programme that, we hope, will ultimately expand across the whole of the UK. Red squirrels have lived here for more than 10,000 years and were our only squirrels. That was until the mid-1800s, when a small number of grey squirrels from America were released in a handful of parks and country estates as a novelty species. The rest is history, but we are now hoping to reverse this."
Floating bridge to be out of action for 12 days to undergo annual inspection. From the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Lee. The floating bridge will undergo its annual inspection by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, MCA, in March. During this time, the Council will also undertake planned biannual maintenance works. As a result of this inspection, the vessel will be out of action from Monday, March the 20th until Friday, March the 31st, which is 12 days. The schedule of maintenance works to be undertaken include replacement of drive motor and hydraulics pump, inspection of hydraulic system and voids, lifting of all guide wheels and inspection or change out if required, 2-year replacement of the prow cables, prow stress point inspection and replacement of prow hinge pins, installation of safety walkways in engine rooms, replacement of startup batteries and wiper rocket switches, build float system service, overhaul of the touchscreen units to ensure that all software is up to date and fully functional, vessel cleaning, painting where applicable, chain pit pump out inspection, and staff training. Councillor Phil Jordan, Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure, said, "The MCA's visit is a very important time of the year for the floating bridge. The annual inspection ensures that we meet our obligations for operating a vessel in public service, and while this takes place, we will take the opportunity to carry out necessary planned remedial maintenance works. During this period, the replacement launch for foot passengers and cyclists will be operating."
Hello, this is an article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Sue. Amazon Prime cold callers and building services all among latest Isle of Wight scams. Amazon Prime cold callers, cowboy builders asking for money, and are all among the latest scams on the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight Against Scams Partnership, IWASP, has issued the following information to help prevent islanders being caught out. A reminder about the Amazon Prime scam saying that you owe money. Again, this appears to be coming from an island number. Just because the number calling you starts with 01983 doesn't automatically mean you can trust it. Scammers will buy bulk numbers starting with any code and use them until they get blocked or removed. A warning to island traders. The Council's Building Control Department have advised us that they work with a company called Building Control Communications, formerly LABC Publishing, who produce a customer user guide which is funded through advertising. It appears that someone is contacting companies that have previously advertised and claiming to either be from the Isle of Wight Building Control or from the bailiffs, and demanding payment for previous adverts. One local company has unfortunately fallen victim to the scam. If you are a business, be very cautious about advertising with companies that contact you out of the blue to advertise with them. Despite the inclement weather, we have received reports of cold calling on the island. Most recently, somebody has been leafleting areas and then knocking on doors to try to buy gold, silver and valuables. Trading Standards strongly advises against engaging with anyone who operates like this, and particularly allowing them access to your property. If you wish to sell any valuables, we recommend contacting reputable auction houses or antique shops. Be wary of any phone calls stating they are offering free surveys in the area for government grants relating to insulation, solar panels, etc. Do not engage with anyone who contacts you in this way. Anyone who thinks they might have been a victim of a scam can find out more information on how to report it here. www.iow.gov.uk/business/trading-standards.
Good morning, everybody. This is Imelda, who'll be reading some of your news today.
Good morning, everyone, and this is John, who'll be assisting Imelda with reading the items today. Here is this week's society news. Swimming session is on Monday between 1:15 and 2:15 p.m. at Medina Swimming Pool. Transport is available if required. The cost is £5 for swimming and £2.50p for transport. Good News Yoga will resume now on the 31st of January at Millbrook House, starting at 2 p.m. The cost is £3, which includes refreshments. Coffee and chat will be on Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. here at Millbrook House. Please come along and chat with members, friends and staff. Advance notice that Striders will be on February the 3rd, not the 27th of January. This is due to volunteer availability. More details will follow. Our New Year's lunch at the Isle of Wight College was a huge success. 41 people attended, which included members, staff, volunteers and trustees. Our new newsletter is being packed and sent on Monday. If you would like to join us for any of the activities advertised, which include a short break to Warner's, a theatre trip to Shanklin to watch The Sound of Music, tandem bike riding, etc. If you are attending any activity at Millbrook House, please only attend if you are well. This is to protect other members, volunteers and staff, especially at this time of year.
And now we go on to the news items and the sport. And the first one you won't be surprised to hear is heavy rain brings rats and river water home. From a rat infestation to the reek of river water pervading their homes, residents at one Isle of Wight development are suffering in the wake of heavy downpours. At Riverview Court in Sandown, off Avenue Road, the river bank broke. Floodwater up to 2 feet deep in places surrounds several bungalow-style park houses at the site. A gated community for over 45s, Riverview Court has many elderly homeowners. One vulnerable resident at their wits' end told the county press they had no heating or water for 4 days, and their home had been infested by rats, flushed out of the undergrowth and looking for warmth. They said the rats had chewed through the pipes faster than they could be replaced. Among those to speak to the county press following the weeks of inclement weather was Jim and Helen Ashpole, 2 retirees trapped in their own home. The Sandown couple, both 82, have mobility issues and are unable to safely leave their address due to the sheer body of water between themselves and the rest of the site. It's been going on for years, said Jim. It isn't a new issue, but this is the worst I've seen it. Usually it's up the other end they get it much worse. I think it got worse since work was carried out on Avenue Road. If I had to go out, I'd walk without shoes, put some slippers in the car and drive. But the water's freezing cold and it stinks. It's been really bad here since before Christmas, said Helen. All that heavy rain we've been having comes through the gate at Avenue Roads like a river. We've had trouble getting our medication, gas bottles and food delivered. We've even had trouble getting our rubbish collected. Lots of old people live here and nothing is ever done, said Jim. We've had ducks, swans and fish out here. I'm a fisherman and I could fish out of my front door. In the summer, it's a lovely place to live, says Helen. It's just when it rains and we feel trapped.
Lucky to be alive, Ventnor pensioner counts blessings after huge collapse. An Isle of Wight man said he was lucky to be alive after the collapse of a 20 square foot piece of land in Ventnor on Thursday. Keith Salisbury was in his garden when the land around him gave way. The 78-year-old had left his greenhouse and was walking through his garden gate when it collapsed. The gate itself is now lying among bricks and rubble, which has dropped around 10 feet onto an area of concreted land below. Keith says he had to run for his life and was lucky not to fall. He said he felt the movement of the earth under his feet and heard an almighty noise as soil, infrastructure and flora came crashing down. Another resident, Robert Marks, said today's collapse could have been so much worse had it been later in the day. A huge pile of earth is now sitting between West Street and Victoria Street. St Catherine's School residents are among those affected.
Tributes to old-style Tory councillor. Tributes are being paid to a former chairman of the Isle of Wight Council, Arthur Taylor, who has died aged 94. Councillor Taylor served on the former Medina Borough Council from 1987 to 1995, representing Ryde West. From 1998 to 2013, he was elected to the Isle of Wight Council as a Conservative for the Ryde North West ward. Leading tributes at full council on Wednesday, Colonel Ian Stevens, a fellow Ryde member who previously replaced Councillor Taylor as council chair, recalled working with him. The big thing about Arthur was that he had a heart, and he was quite witty, he said. He was a great guy, and we thoroughly enjoyed his company. Councillor Paul Fuller, who represented Ryde North East, while Councillor Taylor represented the North West ward, described him as an absolute gent and an old-style Tory. For the Isle of Wight Conservative group, Councillor Joe Robertson said, Councillor Taylor was a gentleman. Although he was a committed Conservative, he was able to work with colleagues across the chamber, he said. Councillor Ian Ward, a fellow Conservative, called him a lovely man. He said, sadly his wife Doreen died last year, and that hit him badly.
Island Head aiming to keep schools open. We will put students front and centre and do our best not to close our schools on strike days. That was the message from an Island Head teacher after the National Education Union, NEU, announced strike action for 4 days in February and March. Matthew Parr Berman, executive head at the Isle of Wight Education Federation, which runs Carisbrooke and Medina colleges, told the county press he was going to talk to other island heads about a coordinated response. But, he said, the situation was still fluid, and the union was under no obligation to tell them how many members they had at any given school, and how many would be going on strike. Individual members did not have to give notice until the day of the strike that they were walking out. Yesterday, the NEU announced it was planning strikes on February the 1st, March the 2nd, and March 15th and 16th in the South region. Mr. Parr Berman said he absolutely backed the right to strike, but while the teachers had already been promised a 5% rise, schools were not getting the money from government to cover that, leaving them a big hole in their budgets. Quote, with the union due to meet Education Secretary Gillian Keegan next week, there is still hope the action can be avoided. I don't anticipate closing our 2 schools. We would hope to use online learning, etc. to help with this also. Whatever happens, we will work to keep parents informed. A spokesperson for the Ormiston Academies Trust, OAT, which runs Cowes Enterprise College, said, if strikes do occur on the days they are scheduled for, we will do our utmost to keep our school open, especially for vulnerable students and children of key workers, just as we did during the pandemic. Peter Shreve, Assistant District Secretary of the NEU, told the county press the island result had been largely in line with the national one, with a 83.56% majority in favour on a turnout of 36.23%. Mr. Shreve said, it's with a heavy heart that members have chosen to act. They have chosen to do so because the government doesn't appear willing to act or genuinely consult. Government has known about staff shortages and its impact on workload for years. Closing this gap will not be a quick fix, but it's not too late for positive discussion.
Wet leg in awards running. Isle of Wight band Wet Leg has been nominated for 4 Brit Awards. They have been nominated in 4 categories at the Brit Awards 2023. Group of the Year, Best New Artist, MasterCard Album of the Year, and Best Rock Alternative Act. They will also be performing at the ceremony on February the 11th, exposing them to a bigger mainstream audience than ever before. This year looks set to be another big one for the band, fronted by Hester Chambers and Rhian Teasdale. They have already been nominated for 5 Grammy Awards and are due to go on a world tour with Harry Styles. Rhian and Hester said last week, "Somebody hold our horses while we get to grips with this wild news. Being nominated for a Brit Award is too hard to comprehend. We never could have expected for our wee band to achieve this." The band's song Chaise Longue has been watched more than 9 million times on YouTube.
Woman dies following crash in High Street. An 81-year-old woman has died following a crash in Newport on Monday. Hampshire and Isle of Wight constabulary officers, alongside paramedics and firefighters, were called to the High Street just after 3 p.m. Police said a lorry and a pedestrian were involved in a collision outside the former Carphone warehouse store, near to the junction with St James's Street. A woman from Totland was pronounced dead at the scene, police said. Her family had been informed and are being supported by specialist officers. A 24-year-old man from Bembridge, arrested on suspicion of causing death by careless driving, has been released under investigation. Firefighters from Newport were also called to provide scene safety. Cordons were erected around the town and a road closure was put in place from St James's Street at its junction with Lugley Street to McDonald's. Officers are now appealing for dashcam footage. A spokesperson for police said, "We are appealing for any witnesses to come forward and would particularly like to speak to anyone with relevant dashcam, doorbell or CCTV footage." Closures in and around Newport Town Centre were lifted on Tuesday morning. Flowers appeared on the memorial statue during the week.
Knighton man convicted over attack on woman. A Knighton man has been convicted following an attack on a female dog walker in St Lawrence. At around 9:30 a.m. on December the 22nd, 2021, Douglas Knight of Undercliff Drive approached a woman in Charles Wood. Knight, 29, had initially passed her before turning to follow her. As he approached her, he began to pet her dog and chat to her before she continued walking. A jury sitting at Portsmouth Crown Court were told that Knight continued to walk behind the woman before grabbing her and forcing her to her knees. Despite Knight trying to cover the woman's face, she bit him, screamed for help, and elbowed him before he ran off towards Hunts Road. Police were called and Knight was arrested nearby by attending officers. He was subsequently charged with one count of false imprisonment and one count of committing an offence while intent to commit a sexual offence. On May 6, 2022, Knight admitted false imprisonment. However, he denied the second charge and the case proceeded to trial in Portsmouth on Wednesday, January the 11th, 2023. On Wednesday, The jury found him guilty of committing an offence with intent to commit a sexual offence, and sentencing is on February the 28th.
Hero bar staff help in arrest. Hero bar staff helped in the arrest of a suspected gunman in Ryde on Monday. Members of the bar staff at the Veteran in Ryde told the county press they also alerted nearby businesses along Ryde Esplanade and George Street to stay inside. They say around 6 armed police arrested the suspect. Thomas, one of the bar staff, said a man entered the premises around 2 p.m, boasting about how he had been released from prison that day. Staff were already on high alert because they'd been informed by Ryde Pub Watch that a man had been in town talking about how he had a gun and a knife. The pub on Ryde Esplanade, formerly the Marine Hotel, has undergone some big changes in recent weeks in its transition to the Veteran, supporting armed forces personnel. Thomas said, "We contacted management about how to progress, but the man in question was reluctant to let staff leave the bar area. Myself and another member of staff asked the man if he smoked, because we were going outside. Once outside, we were able to contact the police with the help of our bar manager, alerting the officers involved with Pub Watch to the man's whereabouts. We alerted staff from adjacent businesses to stay within their premises as we waited for armed police to attend. Around 6 armed police officers and a dog unit arrived and swiftly detained the man, while our staff on site assisted with keeping patrons inside and outside the premises safe. The man was frisked and cuffed and escorted into a van by armed police officers before a thorough sweep of the pub was conducted. Ashley from the Veterans said, "The staff involved did our best and were there as police did what they did. They are very shaken up." The man arrested has been released on bail. No weapons were found or seen during the incident, police have confirmed. A 49-year-old from Ryde was detained on Ryde Esplanade at around 2:15 p.m. It followed an incident at the Black Sheep bar in which it's reported that a man made comments towards staff relating to being in possession of weapons. The man was subsequently arrested on suspicion of possession of a firearm, possession of a knife, and making threats to kill.
New harbour managers. A fishing family from Ventnor have been awarded the contract to manage Ventnor Harbour. A new 5-year contract starting on April the 1st has been awarded by the Isle of Wight Council to Ventnor Haven Management Limited, whose directors are Jeff Blake, Cheryl Blake and Edward Blake. They will operate all aspects of the harbour, including supervision, the collection of mooring fees, maintenance and the removal of seaweed. The councillor says the contract, worth £78,000 per annum, represents a significant annual saving for the council, which last year spent £103,000 on seaweed removal alone. Ventnor Haven Management Limited are one of 2 parties to tender for the contract. The other was Cheetah Marine, the boat building company, whose premises adjoin the harbour, with a bid of £264,320. Ventnor Haven Management is newly formed and has its roots in the Ventnor Haven fishery, which it owns and operates from within the harbour. One of the key changes proposed is a move away from diesel to electricity to remove seaweed from the harbour. Councillor Philip Jordan, a Cabinet member for Infrastructure, Highways and Transport, said, "Ventnor Haven management directors have been involved with the harbour throughout its history and have an in-depth knowledge of the area. The new contract will help safeguard the future of this important ventnor asset and bring about improvements while providing a significant annual saving for the council taxpayer. The decision to award the contract was taken by Councillor Jordan under delegated powers last week.
Young Island Tory seeks to be the MP of new seat. A young Conservative who attended Christ the King College in Newport and is a director of the Isle of Wight Steam Railway has thrown his hat into the ring to be an Isle of Wight MP at the next election. Isaac Farnbank from Knighton, with grandparents in Adgestone, has announced his intention to contest the Conservative nomination for soon-to-be-created parliamentary constituency of Isle of Wight East. Born and educated on the island, Isaac is approaching the final stage of his university studies at King's College London. Former Sky News and BBC journalist Harriet Hadfield, who lives in Seaview, is already seeking the nomination. In a statement, Isaac, 19, said, "Having grown up on the island, I'm passionate about meaningfully tackling the issues we all experience and which shackle our potential. We need to aim higher, not just in our discourse, but in our very way of thinking about how best to achieve a more prosperous, fairer and sustainable island. Not solely in what we seek to achieve, but how we go about leading the progress for which we all yearn. That's why I have outlined an ambitious and coherent vision for the constituency ahead of any selection proceedings. After consulting widely amongst colleagues and friends, I am persuaded that I could be the energetic, capable, committed Conservative Island candidate with a fresh approach that will complement and build on the sterling achievements of Bob Seeley MP." In announcing his intentions, Isaac also published a 19-page manifesto for the constituency called The Wight Way Forward. His proposed policies include creating enterprise zones for Ryde and other seaside towns, trialling an education voucher scheme on the island, and aspiring to an island grammar school, returning the Ryde to Portsmouth catamaran to the jurisdiction of the South Western Rail franchise, and transferring all island ferry ports to trust port or municipal ownership, creating an island regional airport, and backing an island park designation.
Future of free parking. The future of 1 hour free parking in Newport remains undecided. The parking pilot was introduced in May last year and allows shoppers to park in Ludley Street, Sea Street, Chapel Street car parks in the town centre for an hour for free. In the first 6 months of the trial, an additional 62,526 free tickets were issued in the car parks. The scheme was brought in after the COVID pandemic to help aid Newport High Street's recovery and bring shoppers back to the town. It was a joint venture between Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council, the Isle of Wight Council and Shaping Newport. The pilot has been marked as a success by the Community Council as visitor numbers increased in the town. Funding for the pilot runs out later this year and so far only been backed by the Community Council. In its budget, the Community Council has set aside £40,000, the same as last year, to give the Isle of Wight Council in lieu of the lost parking income. In the first 6 months of the trial, after a £20,000 contribution, the Isle of Wight Council had lost £26,027, which was £5,538 less than predicted. At its meeting on Monday, the Community Council was after assurance as whether the free parking would continue. Councillor Matt Price pleaded with the council to keep it going, as it was something the town had needed for a long time, and it had been a tremendous success. He said, "When you look at how other town centres are performing, Newport is doing okay. It's holding its own." Chris Ashman, the Isle of Wight Council's Regeneration Director, said conversations were ongoing with the Newport Business Association about how businesses could help fund the scheme and share the financial burden in the future.
6-month disqualification. Having a heavily pregnant girlfriend was not enough to stop a speeding driver from having his licence taken away. Owen Moore of York Avenue, East Cowes, has been sentenced for doing 85 miles per hour on Military Road. The limit is 60 miles per hour. The 23-year-old, who already had 11 points on his licence at the time of the offence, appeared at the Isle of Wight Magistrates Court last Friday. He entered a guilty plea in December. Defending himself, Moore said he couldn't give a reason as to why he was driving so fast on December 12, 2021. He said his points have since been reduced to 3. He argued he needs his licence as his girlfriend is due to give birth in March, and he needs to be ready to take her to the hospital. He said she is too heavily pregnant to drive herself. Presiding Magistrate Faye Seaborn asked whether family members can drive or whether a taxi or bus would be an option. Moore was given 5 points on his licence and therefore disqualified from driving for 6 months. Totalling up costs, a surcharge and a fine, he was also ordered to pay £349.
Smiles all around for residents. Blackwater Mill Care Home was spoiled this Christmas after a Facebook appeal for cards for its residents with few or no family members saw donations from many islanders, including gifts from as far away as Canada and Sweden. Rookie Co-op dominated mince pies, which were gratefully eaten, and Hunt's Fruit and Vegetables wholesaler gave the home satsumas, a traditional Christmas fruit residents may have found in their Christmas stockings. Donna and Macy Edwards-Weary bought gifts and cards for many of Blackwater's residents. Macy, who won the Made a Difference award at the Child of Wight Awards last year, saves up money she had earned from her Saturday job throughout the year to buy gifts, with her mum Dana driving her around to deliver presents. The charity Embracing Aid gave homemade cards and handcrafted gifts, with particular favourites being fingerless gloves, knitted blankets, memory boxes, mosaic coasters, and needle-felted pictures. Blackwater also received some Christmas cacti and cyclamen from a lovely lady called Sherry. During the Newport Day of Christmas, a youth trust had a stall where children created cards. With the assistance of local primary schools, Age UK also created Christmas cards, as did Carisbrooke College. Students at St George's Church of England Primary in Arreton not only created a card, but also sent a DVD of their nativity play.
Investigation into accident at Trampoline Club. An investigation is underway after 2 members of an Isle of Wight trampoline club were injured in an accident last week. One of those involved, a coach, had to be taken to St Mary's Hospital for treatment, the county press has been told. It is said to have happened at Medina Leisure Centre, Newport, yesterday, Thursday. Wight Flyers Trampoline Club, WFTC, which hires the sports hall from the Isle of Wight Council-run leisure, said the incident occurred when a trampoline was being wheeled in before session. Contrary to reports, the club said the trampoline did not spring open. Chairman of WFTC, Richard Gower Crane, said, "The second club member did not require hospital treatment. We wish both members a quick recovery." A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight Council said, "We are sorry to learn of an accident with a couple of members of the Wight Flyers Trampoline Club and wish them a speedy recovery." In accordance with the hire agreement, the club carries out training for all coaches and club members in the use of equipment and have public liability insurance. There are risk assessments in place and an annual equipment inspection by a recognised company.
Newport won't mark the King's coronation. Newport and Carisbrooke residents could see their town council tax frozen, but no new play equipment as the cost of living impact continues. Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council's preliminary budget for the next year was unveiled on Monday, with plans to invest in a youth initiative and continue regeneration of the former Edinburgh Woolen Mill Shop on the High Street. In the budget-setting process, some tough decisions had to be made, including the decision to not put on any events celebrating the coronation of King Charles III. The council also said it could not afford the proposed £10,000 commitment nor £5,000 for events for a car-free day. To host the events, it would have to raise the amount it was asking residents for, and for each £7,000 the Community Council adds to its budget, the tax rises by 1%. An upgrade for the MUGA at Downside Recreation Ground and play equipment for Parkhurst was also removed from the budget. Councillor Jeff Brodie said in a current economic climate, the council was not looking to increase the precept, so the budget would essentially be frozen. He said it would be entirely inappropriate to have an expanding budget, which would invest in more areas and increase the council tax. While it is said to be a frozen budget, councillors agreed it was actually cutting services, which Councillor Julie Jones-Evans said was counterintuitive, as people needed the Community Council more and she wished they could do more. Funding has been earmarked to continue the free parking hour in 3 Newport Town Centre car parks, should the Isle of Wight Council agree to continue the pilot. If the larger authority does not wish to carry on the parking scheme from May, the money would instead fund a community development officer.
Honks for NHS strike at hospital. NHS staff gathered outside St Mary's Hospital on Wednesday and Thursday as protests continue over pay. Although Isle of Wight health teams did not vote to support action, a picket line was instead organised by workers from a mainland hospital trust with employees who deliver services on the island. Staff from the Solent NHS Trust were expected to join them. Those braving the freezing cold said they had been getting lots of support and had been hearing cars honking as they passed by on Medina Way. Chanting, 1, 2, 3, 4, we want nurses on the floor, they said. There is only a few of us, but it shows us standing up for our patients and gives us a presence. You're welcome to show support. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust said, services are not affected. The picket line was organised by the RCN branch for Midlands Partnership Foundation Trust for their members who deliver services on the Isle of Wight, as they have a mandate for official action. It came as teachers who are members of the NEU union announced plans to walk out from February the 1st. 7 days of strike will take place in February and March, and any single school will be hit by 4 of those 7 days.
Newport's dessert shop Sweet Charlie makes hard decisions to temporarily shut. Popular Isle of Wight dessert shop Sweet Charlie's has announced its sudden closure. The cafe on Newport High Street has said it hopes the closure is only temporary. It came just days after a fundraiser was launched due to increasing bills, costs of supplies and the impact of COVID. The cafe was hoping to raise £35,000 in a bid to secure its future. So far, £1,556 has been donated. A statement from the cafe, posted on Tuesday, said it will shut while the business and its financial position is reevaluated. On Facebook, the statement reads, "We are trying to contact all bookings, so please contact us if you haven't managed to get hold of you personally. It's been a truly hard decision to make, but it has to be done. Thanks to everybody for your support, and we hope we have brought loads of happiness and smiles to many of you over the time that we've been open."
100th Birthday Girls. Former hairdresser and singer Kay Milton has led a busy life filled with song, dance and family, and now she has turned 100. Kay was born Kathleen Margaret Jolly on January the 14th, 1923 in St Albans, Hertfordshire. From the age of 5 she began piano lessons, and from age 8 learnt the violin. She loved singing, and by 13 had an impressive vocal range of over 3 octaves. At 16 she was planning to attend Trinity College in London to become a professional pianist. However, in 1939, with the outbreak of the Second World War, the college closed to new students. Kay instead trained for a professional career in hairdressing, eventually opening her own salon and becoming president of the Hearts and Beds Hairdressing Association. For several years she took the part of leading lady in Gilbert and Sullivan operas, and for a few months sang professionally at London's Drury Lane Theatre. In 1955, Kay met future husband Reg Milton when they appeared together in The Mikado. They married in May 1957, with Reg taking on Kay's 3 daughters from her first marriage. In 1960, their son Stephen was born. After enjoying family holidays to the Isle of Wight, they decided to move to the island in 1969, taking on the Sandringham Hotel in Shanklin. Kay later became president of the Shanklin Hotel Association and helped run Shanklin Regatta for many years. In 1970, Kay and Reg joined Sandown Operatic and Dramatic Society, with Reg taking leading parts with his powerful tenor voice. Kay became chorus mistress and later musical director, also performing lead parts in Oklahoma and Fiddler on the Roof. In 1971, Kay and Reg were among the founding members of the Island Savoyards, and Kay their first musical director. Kay later became chorus mistress for the Townswomen's Guild at Bembridge and Ryde, guiding them to multiple success in Isle of Wight music festival competitions. The National Operatic and Dramatic Association asked Kay to represent them on the island. Both Reg and Kay finished their singing days with the Phoenix Choir. With declining health in 2021, they moved into Old Charlton House residential home in Cowes. Kay was not the only resident celebrating her 100th birthday this week. Daphne Denham also turned 100, and both centenarians enjoyed a joint party.
A consultation has been launched over plans to cut primary education and the Island Learning Centre, ILC. Critics of the proposal say the specialist school in Albany Road, Newport, is crucial to helping children turn around their behaviour outside of mainstream schools before getting them back to class. The Isle of Wight Council says an established extension of a Hampshire-based scheme could replace it. Parents whose children are currently at the ILC have been asked to comment on the plans, which could see changes from September. The ILC says its aim is to maximise the academic achievement of our pupils while addressing their individual social and emotional needs, often with the additional support of other external agency. It takes children who have been permanently excluded from their mainstream school or who are at risk of permanent exclusion. It also caters for children with special education needs who are awaiting a place at a special school, and those who are medically unwell or who are emotionally vulnerable with a diagnosis of mental health difficulties. A document says the ILC could become a provision for 11 to 16-year-olds only from September. Currently, it accepts children from as young as 5 years old, but instead, Hampshire's Primary Behaviour Service could be extended to the island, offering support within mainstream primaries. Critics fear that could be detrimental and have called it a cost-cutting measure, warning the island-dedicated SEND schools are full. The spaces for just 60 children. There are currently 20 primary pupils and 73 secondary children registered at the ILC. Officially, there are only 10 primary places, although some pupils remain registered with their original school. The consultation document says Hampshire's Primary Behaviour Service, PBS, is an established service with a successful track record. Its annual survey consistently shows overwhelming positive impact and responses from schools. The Council said, "Through this proposal, the Council is responding to what it believes is a need and appetite for more of the service, free at the point of delivering across the system. This would entail greater investments in our primary behaviour services, providing the best services to get the best outcomes." Concerned existing ILC parents will meet on Monday.
13-year-old girl in court. A 13-year-old girl will appear before Isle of Wight Youth Court on suspicion of multiple offences after being charged by police earlier this month. Police charged the teenager with a public order incident, assault, criminal damage, as well as a drugs offence. Isle of Wight Police confirmed that all the offences were committed in Newport Town Centre. Isle of Wight Police said victims of these incidents included shop staff and stores within the town centre.
Businesses make students' pirate ship dream come true. It has been all hands on deck at Sandown Primary School this week as 2 Isle of Wight businesses teamed up to bring smiles to the faces of students. Reception pupil at the Bay Church of England School were in for an overwhelming surprise when a wooden pirate ship mysteriously docked in their playground. It was put there over the Christmas holidays, free of charge, thanks to Islander Richard Dixie of island firm Dixie Landscapes. He came up with the idea while carrying out works to reduce flooding at the Winchester Road site. When we were down there, one of the teachers showed me a picture of a boat and asked for me to quote for me buying and installing it, and Richard told the Isle of Wight County Press. I looked at it and thought it's far too small for the kids here, so I sat down that night and drew out a rough sketch. It was then that Richard approached John Hayward, manager of the Newport branch of Jewson's, who kindly supplied materials free of charge. John said, "I just thought it was a great opportunity to get involved. I know Richard and have a great relationship with him, so it was an ideal opportunity to put something back into the community." And while his business was shut down for Christmas, Richard got to work building and installing the boat bit by bit. It took around a week altogether, and the result even came as a shock to staff at the school. One pupil said, "The new ship is 10 billion cool."
Council offering £240,000 in grants. Isle of Wight organisations are being urged to apply for grants from the Council to help support those in need in their communities. A total of £240,000 has been made available by the local authority to support island initiatives, helping to keep vulnerable families warm and provide them with food and utilities. Community and voluntary organisations, as well as town, parish and community councils, are all being urged to apply. Councillor Debbie Andre, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, said, "We aim to reach as many island residents as possible. I would like to urge voluntary, faith, charity and community groups across the island to apply for a community grant and help to make a positive difference to the lives of local people. The latest community grants are funded by the Household Support Fund, provided to local authorities by the Department for Work and Pensions to support vulnerable households, especially with the cost of food and energy bills."
Small dog was killed. Police are investigating after 2 small dogs were attacked, one fatally, by a large dog described as a Leonberger. The 2 separate dog-on-dog attacks both happened around the Golden Hill area of Freshwater on January the 11th. A Hampshire and Isle of Wight constabulary spokesman said, "We have received reports of dogs being attacked by another dog, described as a Leonberger, in the Freshwater area. The first incident reportedly occurred between 9 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. on a footpath near Golden Hill Fort on Wednesday, January 11th. A Chihuahua sustained an injury. Later that day, it reported the same dog attacked and killed a miniature wire-haired dachshund at Golden Hill."
Better news on the tour. The Elite Tour of Britain cycling race could yet come to the Isle of Wight in 2024 to make up for the lost leg of the race last year. The final stage of 2022's Tour of Britain was due to take place in September, but was cancelled following the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And last week it was announced the Isle of Wight was not being included in the 2023 event. The sudden cancellation meant the Isle of Wight Council was left £350,000 out of pocket, having paid a £250,000 hosting fee and other expenses, totting up to a further £100,000. The council was entitled to a refund of the host venue fees after the real costs had been deducted from Tour of Britain organisers Sweet Spot. The council said Sweet Spot was insured to cover the fees. However, the authority said it was made clear by Sweet Spot that it would not be in a position to refund any of the money. In response to the council's comments, Sweet Spot said contingency cover in the event of a senior royal family member's death had been prohibitively expensive and commercially unviable for some time. The crippling impact of the COVID pandemic on the events industry, which prevented it from running a race for nearly 700 days, had impacted its ability to afford the insurance. Instead, negotiations have been ongoing since September to provide money towards a future cycling event on the island. The Council's Corporate Scrutiny Committee discussed the matter on Tuesday.
And for Wight Memories, we have a plea for help for historic Waverley. A public appeal has been launched to urgently raise funds to enable the historic paddle steamer Waverley to sail again in 2023. In 2022, operational costs soared, resulting in a lack of funds to survive the winter maintenance period. The vessel has to be dry docked annually before the sailing season begins. She is booked to enter dry dock in late March to re-enter service in May, but the charity that runs her doesn't have the funds for dry dock fees and other costs to enable her to start sailing. Peter Semple, Waverley's general manager, explained, "Last year's our fuel costs increased by over £300,000. We urgently need to raise funds, or we simply can't afford the start-up costs for this summer season." Operating a historic steamship like Waverley is inherently expensive. We are now spending over £600,000 a year just to maintain her in operating condition. Spare parts for a paddle steamer are rarely off the shelf and come at considerable cost. Dry docking the ship is the single largest expense of the winter maintenance work, and we can't afford to dock her. In September last year, the Isle of Wight gave Waverley a fantastic welcome after a 4-year absence. The ever-popular cruise from Yarmouth Pier around the island allows locals to view the complete coastline from the water, a sailing that now only Waverley provides. I hope that anyone who enjoyed seeing and cruising aboard Waverley last year or in the past might support our dry-docked 2023 appeal. We are planning on sailing from the island in September again this year, subject to a successful appeal. Donations to the Dry Dock 2023 appeal, which has a target of £180,000, can be made online at waverleyexcursions.co.uk or by calling 0141 243 2224. Those donating online can be included on a virtual donor wall, and anybody donating by March the 1st will be eligible to enter a draw to visit Waverley and see her out of the water in dry dock.
And now we come to My View by Catherine James. A winter walk in the White Forest. I heard them before I saw them. Shrieks of excited children pierced the woodland air as I squelched my way towards the clearing. A temporary encampment had been demarcated with tethered birthday balloons, and in the middle I spied the supervising grown-up, who had presumably sent partygoers scattering among the trees in search of feathers, oak leaves, or sweet chestnut cases. I too was gamifying my walk in Borthwood Copse, occasionally sidestepping off the track to examine a branch, scaly with deckle-edge fungus, or tangle of fork lichen. I'd set myself the goal of finding catkins, and was delighted to see an abundance of them, poised to wag in the breeze like little lambs' tails. For so many of these short winter days I had been hunched indoors over my corporate laptop as, even though the government has seemingly washed its hands of COVID-19, Many of us are still working from home in a post-pandemic fug. So, at the weekend, seeing a break in the clouds, I went for a walk in the woods. I picked up a pal, and with his bouncy little spaniels in tow, we headed for the National Trust copse. Once unleashed, the dogs ran in Morse code, dashing ahead, then dotting on the spot to investigate an interesting aroma. The low-slung mutts scurried into a big puddle, exuberantly wading up to their armpits, leg pits, through the muddy water, with the occasional backwards glance to make sure we could see how mischievous they were being. The pups evaluated other hounds. What nuanced messages they received with their noses we can only guess at, though it seemed possible that the spaniel's natural scent was masked by their mud packs. I sloshed after them, the water no match for my wellies. Suctioning a foot out of one particularly murky hole elicited a satisfying slurp, before my imprint was swallowed in a sloppy wash. We reached the cathedral, a glade encircled by smooth-trunked beeches. In warmer months I have lain on the ground there, staring up through the trees' armature, daydreaming in the dappled light. Not today, though. The arena was a quagmire, though that didn't stop one of the dogs rolling joyously around, paws kicking as he span. Was he channeling my memories of that summer day? Britain may not be South America, although Amazon World is within a mile of Borthwood, but it still has rainforests. These cover only 1% of the land, with none on the Isle of Wight. Whatever this copse's ecological status, there is something magical about exploring mushy winter woodland and scrutinizing inscrutable slow-growing plants. As we walked home, I saw a dog wearing a bow-wow onesie. I giggled to its owner. You realize that you have doubled your workload. Not only will you have to clean your pooch, but you'll have to wash his pyjamas too. I left my friend to hose down his caked canines, while I swirled my boots in a gravelly pool, ready to splash another day.
And this is the view of an Army Cadet Force Lance Corporal, Jessica Atkins. Every year, a different county represents the Army Cadet Force, ACF, in the march past the cenotaph at the Remembrance Parade in London. In 2022, it was Hampshire and the Isle of Wight's turn, which took nearly 50 years to come around. During annual camp in August, all cadets were told about the opportunity, and many applied, including some from the island. Luckily, 4 of us, myself, Jode Rogerson, Will Hickmott and Alex Watson, were selected. The training for this nationally televised event consisted of 2 weekend camps focusing on drill and individual kit, and 2 days of kit and general preparations in Winchester at Newborough House, which in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight's ACF's headquarters. This included No. 2 dress being issued for all cadets helping out in the Royal Albert Hall Festival of Remembrance on Saturday, November the 12th. From the island, 3 of us, Joe Rogerson, Alex Watson and she, as myself, were chosen. Finally, Friday, November the 11th came around, and cadets from across the county met in London at Hammersmith Cadet Training Centre. We had multiple kit inspections and spent the rest of the evening preparing kit and polishing boots. The adult instructor in charge, RSM Harris, went to the Royal Albert Hall to receive timings for the next day. On Saturday, we arrived at the Royal Albert Hall at about 8 a.m. and were briefed about our roles in aiding the British Legion. The ACF joined other organisations in poppy and programme selling, and assisting veterans in wheelchairs. Between these duties, we also watched the afternoon showing of the Festival of Remembrance. Hampshire and Isle of Wight's cadet Mr. Dovey also represented the ACF in the banner party during both the afternoon and televised evening shows. In total, all cadet and other organisations raised over £25,000 for the RBL. I will forever be moved by the Festival of Remembrance and feel so thankful that I had the opportunity to volunteer for the RBL and meet many veterans, including some from World War II and the Falklands. The rest of cadets and adults just participating in the march past the cenotaph spent the day visiting different tourist sites around London and were watching the evening showing of the Royal Albert Hall Festival of Remembrance when we arrived back at the CTIC. From the island, 2 of us, myself and Will Hickmott, joined the other 30 cadets and some adult instructors in the march past the cenotaph on Sunday. Everyone was brought to the mall for a final kit inspection, and we then marched into position up from the cenotaph. As crowds gathered, we heard the gun salute and stood to attention for the 2-minute silence. After the national anthem, we could see the PM and members of the royal family just hundreds of metres away, laying wreaths and paying their respects. It was amazing to watch all the veterans, representing every regiment and section of the armed forces, marching past us in the parade. I will never forget their faces, full of pride, as thousands of onlookers applauded their service and remembered those we have lost. Loads of veterans individually greeted Army cadets representing their regiments, and while we were waiting, some veterans that were naval divers entertained us all with many stories. Suddenly the parade moved forward, and we were marching towards the cenotaph. "All eyes left," was called as we passed the monument and continued towards Horse Guards Parade. Before finishing the march, Prince Edward took the salute, so we did an eyes right towards him. Then we formed up in a squad surrounded by all of those which also marched and took a second to reflect on what we just participated in. I will forever be thankful for this opportunity, which allowed me to make friends from across the country and represent an organisation that has given me so much. It was so special to be able to pay respects in such a special way and meet many amazing veterans.
And now, public information. A look at grand manor houses of the island by Sarah Burdett of the Isle of Wight Society. In the 1600s, the Jacobean style of manor house was adopted on the island, as at Sheet Manor near Chillerton. This building is a refined version of the E-shaped Tudor house, but not strictly speaking a manor house, as it was part of the Gatcombe estate. Another fine example is Arreton Manor. Both are built of island stone, and each has elaborate internal carved woodwork. Each has several outbuildings dating perhaps from earlier times. Another manor house, once open to the public, is Gatcombe. By the mid-1700s, Georgian rebuilding of the Tudor style of house was in vogue. Gatcombe Manor is a good example, showing a typical Georgian house style. The proportions are classical, a severely symmetrical rectangular box with a pediment and parapet, hiding much of the roof. The windows are irregular sash windows, with the second floor windows shorter. A Venetian window was installed, but later moved to the rear. Sir Henry Englefield, in 1816, bemoaned the passing of the old style, disliking the, quote, modern square box, unquote, with a, quote, dull area of weedy gravel, unquote. Some of the Tudor house was incorporated into the rear of the Georgian building at Gatcombe. The most imposing classical revamp of a Tudor house was at Appledurcombe near Wroxall. Work started in 1701, but it was Sir Richard Worsley who completed the new building after his European Grand Tour in 1772. The classical style was followed with Corinthian columns to the ornamental porch. The walls of sandstone quarried from the undercliff at Bonchurch. Many of the decorative features are of the English Baroque tradition. The grounds were laid out by Capability Brown. The house has had a checkered history. Matrimonial scandal in 1781 and stories of excessive living led to Sir Richard Worsley moving abroad for the rest of his life. The house passed to the Earl of Yarborough, and later the second Earl of Yarborough removed all Richard Worsley's collection of paintings and Greek sculpture before selling the property. Appledurcombe became a school in 1867. In 1901 it housed French monks who had to leave France. They could not afford the asking price, so in 1908 they moved to Coire. Troops were billeted in Appledurcombe during the First World War, and then it was left empty, although described as habitable in 1932. In 1943, during the Second World War, a landmine left Appledurcombe a roofless ruin. In 1952, Appledurcombe was taken over by the predecessor of English Heritage. In 1986, restoration of the Eastern Front took place. Roofs were reconstructed, sheltering the Great Hall. External stonework was restored and sash windows of Georgian style inserted. The building regained its 18th century appearance.
Well, we now go on to what's on. And at the Medina Theatre, we have a date for the X Factor stars G4 during their live tour. Vocal quartet G4, who made their name on ITV's The X Factor, are set to perform at Medina Theatre as part of their live tour. They will perform on May the 14th, 2023. With perfectly pitched harmonies, G4 won the public's heart back in 2004 on the first series of the X Factor and continue to mesmerise audiences year after year with their unique style. Their set list usually includes classics, hits such as Bohemian Rhapsody, Creep, My Way, Circle of Life and Nessun Dorma. G4 made their Isle of Wight debut on Wight Proms this year. Mike Christie, 1/4 of G4, an original member of the group, lives on the Isle of Wight and is the organiser of Wight Proms. For tickets, go to the Medina Theatre.
Forthcoming events at Northwood House, Cowes. On Friday 27th of January at 7 p.m, there's an alternative fun Burns night, supper and quiz. And on Friday the 3rd of February at 7 p.m, the Jazz Society are holding a winter warmer.
The first letter that I have comes from Pearl Broomhead of Gurnard. As a teenager, I used to go to the market to feed the animals. One memory I shall never forget is a tiny calf was tethered to a stall, feet not touching the ground, foam coming from his mouth. I asked one of the people to help. His reply that it doesn't matter, it's going for slaughter. As for reminiscing watching animals being herded down Scarrett's Lane for slaughter, someone please tell me what pleasure comes from watching that. If butcher shops were slaughterhouses, we may see what goes on. Thank God for compassion in world farming. And yes, I am a veggie, thank God.
The next letter is from Anne Grant of Fareham, headed Research into Island Men on Stricken Lancastria. I am researching, on behalf of a friend, the Second World War tragedy of the bombing of the British liner Lancastria. The aunt of my friend was an English nurse who tried to save lives that day by pulling drowning men from the sea. In August 1940, the county press reported that some island servicemen were aboard the Lancastria, being evacuated from France, when it was bombed on June the 17th, 1940, in the French port of Saint-Nazaire. The names include Corporal Frederick John Dibdin of Freshwater, Sergeant G.F.R. Hardy of Knighton and Newport, possibly Gerald Francis Richard, Private A.W.R. Cause of Bembridge, possibly Alfred Walter Richard Cause, Private W.H.C. Linnet of Ryde, possibly Wilfred or William Henry Charles Linnet, Private Frederick John Dibdin of Freshwater Bay, and Mr. P. Cheverton of Freshwater, who was the pre-war Freshwater Golf Club greenkeeper. If any readers can help by confirming their relatives or any other islanders not listed above were indeed caught up in this tragedy and can add to their stories, please get in touch with me via the county press at editor@iwcp.co.uk. Please mark your email Anne, that's A-N-N-E, Grant-Lancastria.
And this is from San Turner of Sandown. I was pleased to see the letters in the county press deriding Prince Harry, and pleased also that the island's MP is leading the campaign to have Harry removed of all royal titles, and rightly so. I've written to the MP with these self-same thoughts. Firstly, he should be stripped of any titles he's abdicated to a foreign country, where he is now domiciled. Secondly, on a personal front, within himself, he's acted like a spoiled child, of which there are many ways to describe his behaviour, throwing his toys out of the pram, failure at college, blaming everyone else for his failings, crying at these failures and expecting us to cry with him, childish tantrums, half-truths and innuendo, etc. Therefore, put simply, he's a disillusioned, pathetic moron, and not one of the most likeable people in the country, and we once thought of so dearly of. Thirdly, not only has he insulted his family, he has insulted the Crown, our nation and all citizens, plus his comrades he worked alongside. Unforgivable. Finally, with regard to his book, how the United States nation tolerates this rogue beggar's belief. I wonder if the shoe was on the other foot, say a leading US politician or even an ex-US president were to come to our shores with such inane bleatings against the United States. What would the US think of that? Sorry, Harry, you've made your bed, lie in it, and it's no good trying to save your royal titles. You fled your country and have rescinded those titles.
A letter from Joy Wiltshire of Totland Bay, headed A Big Thank You. On Friday, January the 6th, we experienced a medical episode that rapidly turned into an emergency that required a 999 call. Sitting in the car park outside the Leisure Centre in Freshwater at 4:30 p.m, dark, waiting for an ambulance. After a second 999 call at 6:15 p.m, where my husband had 3 more episodes of not being able to breathe, blacking out, being disorientated, the last one lasting over a minute. The ambulance, number 610, was 7 minutes away with Beth and Kenny on board. The thorough, professional yet friendly way my husband was treated was just amazing, gave us confidence that we were in the right hands. St Mary's A&E staff were thorough in their search as to the cause. The ECG recorded wildly dancing numbers. After spending the night in A&E, the following day my husband was transported to QA Hospital in Portsmouth, straight into theatre where a pacemaker was fitted. A close call indeed. Throughout the entire experience we were treated with respect, professionalism delivered in a friendly, caring manner. We can't express our gratitude and thanks enough to all the NHS staff. He is now home.
And this is from Jill Keith of Cowes. How I agree with John Herbert in his disgust at the amount of dog poo left on our pavements and in parks. I am totally against fining, which is virtually what he is proposing, all dog owners. I am scrupulous in picking up after my dog, and very often after others too. I don't know the answer, as most of these crimes are probably permitted after dark or early morning when there are no witnesses. Maybe we need more aggressive and threatening signs, even if they may be rather unsightly. I did phone the council recently. The suggestion was to send in a photo of some poo.
A short letter from Peter Stilwell, now of the Philippines, headed "Don't Forget the Black Arrows." In all reports I've had a chance to see so far, I have not seen the Black Arrow rockets for satellites that were built and tested on the Isle of Wight. The recent failure in Cornwall would have been good to see successful.
And with that, Imelda says goodbye to you and have a lovely weekend, at least the sun's shining.
And it's goodbye from John, also wishing you a lovely weekend. The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Audiobooks are experiencing something of a boom with the general reading public, an increasingly important part of the book trade. But they've always been popular with blind and partially sighted people for pretty obvious reasons, ever since the founding of the RNIB's Talking Book service in the 1930s. That service still there, of course, but now supplemented with a much wider range of audiobook services, including online. And this is the programme where we invite a couple of guests to pick out an audiobook which has particularly delighted, intrigued them, and to tell us why. I chime in with one of my own as well. We may discuss things other than the books themselves, such as how they're read, who buy, and what delights us and puts us off about audiobooks generally. Well, our two guests tonight have quite a lot in common actually, but they've chosen two very different books. Jackie Brown and Dave Williams are very adept techies, if they'll excuse the phrase. They've spent much of their working lives trying to help other visually impaired people cope with the fast-changing world of assistive technology, and they've both ended up working for the RNIB. Jackie as a technology advisor based in Northern Ireland, where she lives. Dave as a customer experience manager, whatever that is. He is also chair of the Braillists Foundation, but they aren't here because of their jobs or who they work for, but as avid readers. So Dave Williams, I'm going to start with you. What have you chosen and why?
I've chosen The Lincoln Highway by Immortals. This book has all sorts of themes, but this book is set in 1954 over a 10-day period. It's written from the perspective of a number of, let's call them kids, young people who have got themselves into trouble. And the story starts with Emmett returning home. He's been at a penal correctional facility for involuntary manslaughter, and he gets home basically to find his younger brother, Billy, and the news that their farm is going to be sold. It's all about what happens next, really.
Yeah.
So this is a coming of age story. It's a road trip journey. I guess there are parallels with Catcher in the Rye. But I think the reason I chose it, this book for me stood out because it really felt like an epic. You know, it felt like To Kill a Mockingbird or one of these really big works of sort of literary fiction, but also because I often can't stand it when they change narrator, you know, when they change point of view. I like to have a kind of a first person narrative and I just want to stick with that. Thank you very much. But actually it really worked very well. And I think the way they cast the narrators in this audiobook was tremendous. So we're going to hear Ulysses now, who is one of the characters who Billy, the younger brother of Emmett, meets on the train. Just listen to this guy's voice. It's tremendous.
Ulysses, who stepped back from no man, stepped back from the child. He stepped back so abruptly, it would have appeared to an observer that the boy had touched a raw wire to the surface of his skin. "Do we know each other?" he asked, shaken. "No, we don't know each other. But I think I know who you are named for." "Everyone knows who I'm named for. Ulysses S. Grant, commander of the Union Army, the unwavering sword in Mr. Lincoln's hand."
It is a fantastic voice. Jackie, how important are voices to you? I mean, because there are multiple voices in this, which, as Dave was saying, can be annoying, but clearly didn't annoy him in this one.
I like it. I actually quite like books that have multiple voices, either by one reader or sometimes there are books with several readers and they take on a character in the book. But one thing I do like about reading is I have to have the book sped up a bit, because when there's a dull reader, if you like, somebody who's just sort of not really doing much with the voices, it makes them sound a bit more animated.
But hang on, if you sped up Ulysses, you'd completely ruin the ambience of that voice, wouldn't you? You'd lose that.
Maybe in that case, but then I wouldn't be able to be bothered keep speeding up every character and putting it back to the normal speed. So, you know, there are exceptions. I just think generally I like narration sped up a bit. I'm not saying they've got to, you know, sound like Pinky and Perky, but I do like a book that's got a little bit more animation.
Dave, you mentioned Catcher in the Rye. I thought of all sorts of things, really. It's a bit like the Canterbury Tales in the sense that it's a way of introducing you to all kinds of people in this case, 1950s America. It does. It catches this whole sweep of American society at one moment in time.
Yeah, this is the way I want to learn about history, with really kind of powerful stories. A few years ago, I read, the Kingsbridge series, The Pillars of the Earth, and then spent the next year and a half going around cathedrals because I wanted to experience the architecture and learn all about that.
These are the Ken Follett books, aren't they?
Right, exactly. And so when we come to the Lincoln Highway, I hadn't really heard of the Lincoln Highway. Apparently this is a route across America from New York to San Francisco, the first route designed for motor vehicles. And that's, why the book gets its name. But actually these kids come from Nebraska, not somewhere that I'd really thought about. But those sort of early scenes, those early chapters in that small town in Nebraska really kind of conjured up an image of a place. So this is the way I like to learn about history, through these sorts of works of historical fiction.
To make this type of book work with individual narrators, didn't he have to make his characters unrealistically articulate? Because they are the voices, they introduce themselves to you. You got 3 teenagers just out of reform school, as you say, and a ridiculously precocious 8-year-old. Did that not bother you at all?
Well, it is a work of fiction, of
course.
I know.
I know.
So I recognise that these people, didn't actually exist. But, it's exploring perspective as well about how children sometimes see things that adults don't. How there's this phrase, there's 3 sides to every story, isn't there? Yours, mine and the truth. And so there's lots of that going on.
It's actually quite sad in places, but it's also very funny, which is quite a good trick to pull off in a way. I hadn't heard of this author, so thank you very much for introducing me to Amor Towles. OK, Jackie, you were greedy. You wanted us to read 18 books, as far as I can see.
And a lot more besides.
This is a series. Explain your choice to us.
Okay, I was introduced by my husband to the author Peter James about 10 years ago, and my husband read a book called Dead Simple. It's the first in 18 books. We're at number 18 now, and I have now read them all.
Whoa.
And this is a detective superintendent called Roy Grace. I've chosen the first book because it's a really, really good place to start with Roy Grace. The storyline is about a groom who is about to get married, and he goes on a stag night with his friends in a transit van. Apparently the groom is the biggest prankster of them all, so they want to get their own back on him. So they decide to put him in a coffin and bury him.
Lovely.
Just for a few hours, but unfortunately,
It goes horribly wrong.
it goes horribly wrong.
So far, apart from just a couple of hitches, Plan A was working out fine, which was fortunate since they didn't really have a Plan B. At 8:30 on a late May evening, they'd banked on having some daylight. There'd been plenty of the stuff this time yesterday, when 4 of them had made the same journey, taking with them an empty coffin and 4 shovels. But now, as the green transit van sped along the Sussex country road, misty rain was falling from a sky the colour of a fogged negative. "Are we nearly there yet?" said Josh in the back, mimicking a child. "The great Umgar says wherever I go, there I am," responded Robbo, who was driving and was slightly less drunk than the rest of them.
So we've set the scene. The problem always with talking about detective novels is the danger of spoilers, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we have to be so careful about what we tell people, but it does all hinge on this idea that they think it's a rather clever idea to bury a bloke in a coffin in a grave. And it's not giving away too much to say that they have this horrendous crash and they're all killed, so nobody knows he's there. Dave, what did you make of Roy Grace?
Well, it was a romp, just old-fashioned detective fiction, a bit of a whodunit, a few nice sort of twists and turns later on in the book that kind of change things up, but it gets a little bit dark in places. But I actually enjoyed it because it isn't the sort of thing I've read for a while.
Did you think you'd grown out of it then, Dave?
Well, I did a little bit, yeah. I didn't come away from the book thinking I want to read the next 17 of these, you know. So I enjoyed it and I'm glad you recommended it, but I won't be reading all 18.
I'm getting to the stage now, I think that the earlier books of the Grace series had you on the edge of your seat. I'm just wondering now if he should really be killed off or if he's coming to the end of his sell-by date.
Perhaps they should bury him in a coffin somewhere.
Well, look, I also like the Cormorant Strike novels. Exactly. And you would love to go for a pint with Cormorant Strike because he'd have all kinds of fascinating things to say about. And I wasn't that bothered about these characters. And for me, the thing that really makes a good book is characters.
Oh, no, I cared about the poor bloke in the coffin buried there.
Did.
And the trouble is, there are so many twists and turns. I reckon if an author can actually make you feel frustrated when the mistakes happen, then he's succeeded to some extent. I'm interested you chose this, Jackie, because it's raunchy. Well, I'm not necessarily surprised about that, but lots of foul language, lots of very negative and aggressive attitudes to women, I thought. Yeah. Some intentional, depicting what maybe were the police attitudes at the time and may still be. Some I thought almost unthinking by the author. Did that not worry you at all?
No, absolutely not. For me, it's got to be the story. And if it's got a good plot, then that's the most important thing.
I'd like to read the second one anyway. OK, my choice. One Summer, America in 1927. It's non-fiction, this, not fiction, but oddly, there are some real parallels with Dave's book, I think, because it is a picture of the United States at a moment in time. There's a war hovering in the background which has just ended. In my book's case, the First World War. Still a lot of resentment. People have come back who haven't got decent jobs. A lot of people with war-caused disablement. There's a kind of mass hysteria present. And in Bill Bryson's picture, because it's a Bill Bryson book, America is full of obsessions. One is the huge growth of flying. He focuses a lot on Charles Lindbergh and his non-stop flight from New York to Paris, which caused wild excitement and hero worship of the flyers, especially Limburg, which catches Bryson's attention. But there are lots of other things. People seem to need spectacle. Huge crowds turn up for events. Baseball is huge at the time. The film industry, you know, first the silence, then the talkies. And just to give you one more view of this book before you tear it to pieces, not loads of politics, but a lot of fascinating anecdotes about some very weird and eccentric presidents. He focuses particularly on Calvin Coolidge, who was, as president, noted mainly for his laziness. He avoided work as much as he possibly could, for his glumness and for the fact that he never used one word where no words would do.
When the nation awoke in August 1923 to find that Harding was dead and the obscure Coolidge was president, most were dumbfounded. Some had stronger feelings. Oswald Garrison Villard, editor of The Nation, wrote, "I doubt if it, the presidency, has ever fallen into the hands of a man so cold, so narrow, so reactionary, so uninspiring, so unenlightened, or who has done less to earn it than Calvin Coolidge." Yet most people found themselves quickly warming to Coolidge, almost in spite of himself. The nation grew fond of his peculiarities and often exaggerated them in anecdote. His most celebrated trait was his taciturnity. An oft-told story, which has never been verified, is that a woman sitting next to him at dinner gushed, "Mr. President, my friend bet me that I wouldn't be able to get you to say 3 words tonight." "You lose," the president supposedly responded.
Which I think is very clever, although perhaps he doesn't make the most of the joke. One more thing, particularly fascinating for me, lots of fake news, you know, mainly generated by the newspapers. The wish to believe almost anything with the minimum of evidence or even just downright lies is there. And we tend to think of this moment in time as a rather hysterical moment with social media. But I was really struck with the feeling this ain't new at all. It's all happened before. Jackie, what did you make of it? And what did you make of Bill Bryson reading it?
Some authors are not great at reading their own books, but I think that was quite well read by Bill Bryson. Again, I did speed it up, but...
Look, it's interesting. Clearly, the man has done just a prodigious amount of research into this period and clearly knows his subjects very, very well. I mean, some of the stuff about Henry Ford is fascinating. What a man full of contradictions.
Yeah,
but,
as many disasters as successes, especially
well,
later
indeed.
on.
And parts of this are quite gruesome. I'm pretty sure the body count is higher than Jackie's Dead Simple. Do you know, it was like reading a list for me. Finding my mind wandering and having to concentrate, David, and trying to bring myself back to it. And I have to confess, I had to speed it up a little bit as well. I just found that there was some really fascinating stories, but not really delivered with any kind of sort of sense of drama. Again, somebody else you'd like to go for a drink with, but as a book, it went on a bit, and it felt like Limburg was in every chapter, wasn't he?
Well, he did pop up quite a lot, yeah. But I think you're being a bit harsh. It's a very light voice, actually. It's almost too light, perhaps, for reading. You know, you need a voice with a bit of body, don't you? It's almost sounded like, having written it, he was bored at having to read it.
Yeah.
But I'm still surprised you say, Dave, that it's a list. I mean, yeah, there are lists in it. But there's also a lot of wonderful anecdotes in it, some really good stories.
There are. Wasn't there a guy who works in a mortuary who also played baseball, and it was said that he would occasionally have a cadaver in his car while he was playing the game?
That's right. This was there was a view of baseball which was completely new. One quick question to you both. You're both Braillists. I'm just wondering what makes you choose in what form to read something, especially if it's available in other formats. What does the audiobook do best is perhaps what I'm asking.
Well, drama, isn't it? So I think Bill Bryson, I probably would like to read that in Braille, and I might get more from it. And it
Which
might
I did, actually. So part of it, I listened to it because that was my job, but I read it in Braille. You can then put your own interpretation on it, of course.
I think so, and I think that might hold my attention more. the reason I chose the Lincoln Highway is because I really felt the narrators brought drama.
You've introduced me to Amor Towles, who's written 2 books before that one, so I'm going to go and find them now.
For me, I used to read them in Braille, and I used to have to lug these big heavy books or get them collected, whatever. I started to listen to audiobooks, and I found that I just got engrossed, and I really liked them. So I've never looked back for the last 10, 12 years.
Yeah, I'm sure Dave and I will both insist there is room for both very
Definitely.
much in the world.
Absolutely there is.
One final note from me is it's really interesting that a lot of the big tech companies are researching ways in which they can use artificial intelligence and synthetic voices to try and deliver audiobooks, at scale. And of course, those of us who love the human narrator are clearly a little bit concerned about what that experience will be like. So watch this space.
We are actually thinking of doing a programme on this, certainly on the development of speech and speech recognition and all that sort of thing. So watch this space on In Touch as well. That's it for today. Many thanks to Jackie Brown, who stood in at the last minute, so thank you for that, and Dave Williams. And thanks for introducing me, to a new author, Dave, and Jackie, for someone whose books I'm going to read in the right order now. We're going to have details about the books on our website, bbc.co.uk/in touch. From me, Peter Wight, my guests, producer this week, Fern Lulham, and studio managers, Amy Brennan and Phil Booth. Goodbye and good reading.
The Scaffolding and Skips news for the 23rd of January 2023 and the following week. Newport area, Santander, 26 St James's Street, Cherry Godfrey, 32 High Street, Newport, Congregational Church, Pyle Street, 29A High Street, 29A Lugley Street, St James Street, 64 High Street, the Co-op, Pyle Street, Halifax, 116 High Street. And in the Ryde area, we've got 5152 the High Street, 71 High Street, 24 Cross Street, and 73 George Street. In Ventnor area, Mirrormere, Hanborough Road, Cowes area, 28 Cross Street, and finally in Yarmouth, the Deacons, High Street.